Asher and his crew were en route to a job site when they came across an overturned truck on the side of the road. Its cargo was strewn across the pavement. Smoke was rising ominously from the engine. At that point, the explosion was elusive. But before we start, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and smash the notification button for more exclusive stories. Asher and his colleagues were driving to a job site when they passed a truck overturned on the side of the road. Its cargo scattered everywhere. Smoke billowed from the engine. Without hesitation, Asher pulled over, his gut telling him to check for anyone in need of help. The truck was still warm, suggesting the accident had just occurred, but something felt off. The driver was nowhere in sight. When Asher peeked inside the cab, he noticed that the seatbelt had been cut. He lowered himself into the vehicle and looked around. He saw personal items scattered around and droplets of blood on the steering wheel. The driver was injured, but he is gone. Before Asher could process the strange scene, his men were shouting, "Ash, move! Get away!" They yelled as they sprinted away. Asher didn't wait to find out why. He jumped down from the truck and ran toward just as a hissing sound grew louder behind him. The sound was followed by a blinding explosion. The blast hit like a hammer, knocking him to the ground. His ears rang and his lungs burned from the smoke. Asher tried to stand. Through the haze, he saw his team, groaning in pain. Some of them were covered in blood. Flames consumed the wreckage, and he realized they weren't out of danger yet. The truck exploded again, the fuel catching fire this time. Asher's knees buckled as the shock wave rolled over them, and he knew they needed help. He ran to one of his colleagues. His vision was blurry, his body was hurting, and his mind wondering what had happened. He looked at the truck and saw that it was almost entirely engulfed in flames. Seconds went by as the emergency sirens blared in the distance, but Asher couldn't hold on any longer, and he lost consciousness. When he woke up, he found himself in a hospital room, the sterile scent of antiseptics and steady beeping of machines, the only signs of life. His head throbbed, and a heavy bandage wrapped around his scalp. The room was windowless, with one single door. Asher's mind was fuzzy as he struggled to recall what had happened. But before he could think clearly, a doctor walked in. He wore a smile, but that didn't really help. Asher felt nothing but confusion and anxiety. "You're lucky to be alive," the doctor said with a casual tone. But something about the way he said it bothered Asher. His instincts were screaming that something was definitely wrong. He started asking about his colleagues, but the doctor assured him that they were well taken care of as he was injecting something into Asher's IV. Almost immediately, Asher lost consciousness again. When he woke up the second time, Asher had no idea how long it had been. A nurse came in with a tray of food, and when he asked what day it was, she revealed that nearly 2 days had passed. Asher's head spun for how long he had been asleep. He asked the nurse about his condition and what had happened, but she revealed nothing of importance to him, as she said that the doctor would come to visit him later. Her evasive answers made Asher suspicious when he asked about his crew. Her lips tightened, and she avoided his gaze. At that point, Asher realized that something was being kept from him, but he couldn't understand what it was or why they were trying to keep him away. As the hours passed, Asher's anxiety grew. He paced the room, trying to make sense of what had happened. Then his eyes caught a small black dot near the ceiling. It was a camera, barely visible. They were watching him. Panic surged through him, and he began banging on the door, shouting for answers, but no one came. Eventually, he was moved to another room, where he found Noah, one of his colleagues, lying unconscious in a hospital bed. The doctors entered, their expressions grave. They explained that the truck had been carrying hazardous materials, and Asher and his team had been exposed. "You must be quarantined. We must make sure that you are no danger to others," one doctor said. They also showed him papers he had unknowingly signed, legal documents that bound him to silence. Asher's blood ran cold. He didn't understand what was happening, but he knew one thing for sure: they had no intention of letting him or his crew walk free without compromising a deal. Their silence in exchange for their freedom. Desperate, Asher and Noah attempted to escape the facility. Noah, with his leg in a cast, was barely able to move, but they pressed on through the sterile, brightly lit corridors. The facility was a labyrinth of identical doors, all locked, and their footsteps echoed loudly in the empty halls. But before they could reach an exit, the security caught them and held them in their chambers. Back in his room, Asher was told the full truth. The materials in the truck were highly contagious, and though they weren't sick yet, any exposure to the outside world could be catastrophic. Asher was trapped, bound by both legal documents and fear. A month later, Asher and some of his crew were released, but he wasn't the same. This event changed his life. He had a story to tell his wife, that he was sick and held in the hospital, but that was all that he could share with her, half the truth, not all of it. He could never tell her what really happened. As life returned to normal, the shadows of that day lingered. Asher could occasionally catch himself lost in thought, the memory of the explosions and the weight of the secret gnawing at him. He had survived, but the truth had been buried, and the danger was far from over. What do you think about today's story? Comment your thoughts in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and share it with your fellows.